everyone, welcome to Painting Crafty and welcome to another draw along. Today we're going to be working on creating this sweet little country style pumpkin scene with some different types of pumpkins, a little crow on top, just to add even a little bit more of that country folk art style of pumpkins. I'm going to be using some watercolor. I'm going to show you the drawing steps first, step by step, and then I'll be showing you the watercolor, some simple watercolor techniques to be able to create these pretty little textures on some of your pumpkins. Well, let's go ahead and start with the drawing steps. One of the reasons why I like drawing pumpkins so much is because you can have some simple basic shapes and then build off of them, and pumpkins come in a whole bunch of different shapes and colors. So really, as long as it has kind of a pumpkin-y shape to it, it's going to read like it's even a pumpkin. I'm sure you've even seen some square-ish pumpkin styles with a top on top, and it still reads like a pumpkin. I'm going to show you how I did this one. For those of you who might like to have a little help drawing, I do have a Ko-fi page, which is rather like a Patreon page. I'll be able to have a clickable link down in the comments. This is where I keep all of my tracers, so you'll be able to copy it out on your printer and then trace it onto your watercolor paper or any other surface that you would like to paint on. And it makes it easy, a quick way to be able to create a little bit of drawing. There's nothing wrong with tracing. Drawing isn't for everyone, and you might just like to paint, and that's fine too. Plus, I give you a copy of the one that I did so that you will be able to have a reference to be able to see how I drew mine. So let's go ahead and jump right on in to some few pumpkins. For this scene, I did a grouping of 3 pumpkins, a tall, a middle, and a little bit stubbier. They're all kind of 3 a little different. The way you're going to set up your paper to create something like this is you would start with your simple shapes. So this little guy right here is a tall oval. So I'm going to be making it a tall oval shape. This isn't going to be anything too fancy. So I've got my tall oval shape. Then my next one over here is kind of a beach ball-y look to it. It's got a nice big old round Cinderella pumpkin look. And I wanted to overlap this one just a little bit. Now this one is a short squatty guy, and it's going to be behind right back there. So I'm going to make it a little bit squattier, a little bit like candy corn. That's what I'm trying to say. Now, when you draw this one, since it's behind this one, we are going to want to make sure that this comes up, and then our bottom is no lower than this bottom here. And because it's behind, we want it to be to look like the bottom is behind. So this is the one that's the most in the front. So that one is going to, the lower level there will be the closest one or the lowest one on your paper when you do this grouping. So that's going to be there. This one is behind it. So we want to make sure that this is a little shorter than this one. So now we have it kind of a composition-wise set up correctly. This one's in the front and these 2 are in the back. Now let's go ahead and start this one here. So we have our pieces and we're going to look at it. If you look at my shapes here, I'm a little narrower here. I'm going to come out just ever so slightly and then come back in and give a little bit of swoop at my bottom. I'm going to put a smile face down low. That will help determine where my top of my pumpkin top is. If I want it to make it look like it's going down a little bit and these pieces are up higher, I want to put this down just a little bit. Now let's go ahead and start those pieces. So I'm going to be coming out to my edge. I'm going to be coming out a little ways this way. So this is going to be creating that middle shape. Then when I get down to the bottom, I'm going to round it off just a little bit to give it kind of a little bit more shape. I like putting that very first one in right away. And then let's come off to the side here. So I'm going to follow my same shape I drew. I'm going to do an arch, and then I'm going to come out a little ways and then come back in again and round it off. Do the same thing over here. So I'm going to come up, round it out. Now I'm not going to see this because that's behind my pumpkin. Now let's go ahead and put the pumpkin top in, and that will be able to determine how much we're going to see in the back. So to do these little pumpkin tops, if you would like one that curls, we're going to start with this inside line, drag it around and stop. So let's start here. We're going to come in, drag it around and stop. We're going to stop it right there. Now we're going to start on this side, and we're going to start wide and then work our way skinnier, come around, drag it around, and stop. So if we want our pumpkin stem to be behind it, we're going to start on here, and we're going to start here. And then we're going to continue on with our line, do a little bit of a little curlicue. I'm going to come here, get skinnier and skinnier and skinnier until there's nothing there. And then all of a sudden I have a nice little curl. Now to do these back ones, I'm going to follow still that shape I've created, but I'm only going to be doing just a slight bit of hump coming down and then the back. Now that will be the back of my pumpkin. So I have a lot of depth in my pumpkin. You might want to go ahead and make this one a little rounded over the top. Let's make it look like it's sitting down inside of there. So these would be rounded over the top of it. Okay, so we have that part of the pumpkin done. Let's work on this one. So this one, the stem is sitting down inside of there as well. So I'm going to come off to my side here, make a little sideways smile maybe. Now this one has some of these shapes that are wider here, or they're going to curve up over my stem. They're going to come a little wider, and then it's going to have this little bit of a gentle swing there. So again, we're having a wide and then coming out. Kind of that candy corn shape too, if you think of it that way, except for it doesn't have a very much of a point. So let's make our little top rounded, come out, give it a little bit of a curve. This one's got a little bit of wonkiness to it. It's not a perfect pumpkin. It's got a little bit of wonkiness to it. Let's go ahead and stick our stem in there right now so I have an idea. So I'm going to come and I'm going to do that curving line. This one I'm going to curve around and make it touch. Like that. This one I'm going to come up, over off to the side, make it come around and touch. Now this is where I get to decide, is it in the front or is it behind? This time I'm going to put it in the front. I'm going to come right across, and then I would erase those little lines in the middle so you can't see those. That determines which is in the front and which is in the back. And then I'm going to come around. Let's do a little bit of a curve, get smaller and smaller and smaller. And then when we erase those lines, so then it looks like this piece is in front, and there we have a different bit of a curve on it. Now let's finish up these pieces. So we're going to come around here. We're going to do a hump over the top, like right there. And then we're going to come out, touch the bottom of where I have it drawn. And that's going to create my pieces, kind of like an orange slice if you think about it that way. So we're going to come around. I'm still going to follow around where the top of my pieces are. Now I need to make sure I'm coming in here. So now I have this one. Whoops, let's do it there. Now I need to make sure I'm coming in here because I'm going to be creating, these ones are more towards the back. So I'm going to be looking at where my part is here. I want it to start from my stem and then come out. There we have it. So we have a little bit more of a squatty Cinderella style pumpkin. Now this one, the stem is sitting a little differently. I'm going to put this at the top of my pumpkin. I'm not going to make it look like it's sitting down inside of there. I'm going to come at an angle, and then at my bottom, I'm going to, or the top of my stem, I'm going to create just an oval shape here to make it look like it's cut off and it's just a little bit of a stem. Now I'm going to start small here at the top, come down, similar to what we've been doing, nothing a whole lot different. I'm going to come up and just make sure that I'm touching the top of my stem. Now this is just a made up pumpkin, but it's still going to be able to read like it's a pumpkin. It's just got a little bit of a different shape. That's how you basically set up your pumpkins. Pumpkins are so much fun to draw, and there's so many different ways that you can draw them. Now let's take a look at this a little bit of a crow. Cute as can be. Simple, super simple to draw. I'm going to start where I have an open spot, and I'm going to call it you know those wedge candies, excuse me, those orange wedge candies that we used to eat as a kid? That's what this kind of reminds me of, where it's got that little bit of a wedge on it. We're going to put a little bit of a tail like that. Now to give a head, there's lots of ways to do these crows. This one I actually put a little bit more of a rounded top on it. So let's work on that. So I'm going to come up. I'm going to give it more of a rounded head here. Come back and then in. But you can leave it a point too. There's lots of different ways to do these crows, and you can make it as big as you would like and as much detail as you would like in there. Normally I put the little bit of a beak here, and then the eye comes closer to the front of my little bird. Now to put a wing on the back, I'm going to do a partial wing. It's going to come like that. So that's going to be the one that's behind. And then the one that's in front, you're going to see more of the whole wing, but I'm going to have it facing down just a little bit like that. Now you can get as country folk art as you would like. I did put a pattern in here. So I did a check pattern, 2 lines down that way, and then just came across this way. When I painted it, that's when I put in the colorations of the check pattern. Now I like to do those crows with the long legs on there, and I think that adds just to the whimsical nature of it all. I like to even put a few little knees on there. Not that a bird has knees, but I like that look. And then I just have the simple little feet on there as well. So you can get as creative as you like. This one also has a little bit of a creative border with some stars, some berries in there. That's all up to you how much you would like to add to your painting and drawing. Now this one is put on a 6x6 card. So I had to cut it. I believe I cut it a 5.5 by a 5.5. This makes a beautiful little card. I just stuck it on with some double stick tape. You would need to spray these if you decide you're going to use watercolor, because watercolor is not a permanent paint. So spray it with a little bit of clear acrylic, or you can wax them. And I like to use the Annie Salone wax. So let's go ahead now, and I'm going to show you some simple ways to paint these to get a pretty little pumpkin look. And if you would like interesting and some textures like that to change up your pumpkin, I'm going to show you that too. So let's go ahead and start the watercolor look. Today I'm going to be using 2 different sets of colors, and just because I'm looking for the colors of what I want, I'm going to be using my Paul Rubens brand over here. And then I also have this inexpensive set, this set here. It has some of those pretty little greens and blues that I would like to use. It also has a little bit of white in there as well. You can use whatever you might have. I like using this one because I just can't quite mix that color, and I really do like that color. So I'm going to be using that. Let's go ahead and start with our orange pumpkins. When you do watercolor, you always start your way light, bright, and then work your way dark. So let's go ahead and start that. I'm going to be using some of these colors here, which are the cadmium yellows, the Indian yellows, and I'll be mixing my colors that way. And probably to darken my colors a little bit, I'll be adding some yellow ochre in there. So let's go ahead and start with my lightest, brightest color. And I'm going to be starting with this one here. Now I'm going to be putting that light, bright color on dry paper, and I'm going to be adding this in here. If you want to leave some white highlights on your paper with bright white, you could do that if you would like to, or you could call this your lightest, brightest color for your pumpkin and just use the yellow as your lightest, brightest color. Now, watercolor is going to follow wherever your paper is wet, so I'm going to just keep this color right in where I want my color to be. If I get my paper wet out here off to the side, this watercolor will travel that direction. If you wanted to do a highlight of bright white, choose a side where you think maybe your direction of your light would be coming from. Maybe this time I'll leave it on my right-hand side. This would be my darker side. Now this is already wet, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the next color, the Indian yellow, a little bit over here. I'm going to choose some of this, and this color here, I'm going to just run it along the ribs of my pumpkin in that area. And because my paper is wet, that color should flow out. And I like to call it, do a little bit of watercolor magic. It's going to blend on its own and create some colors that I don't have to work a lot to do. Okay, so that is the edge. Now I'm going to go ahead and pick up a little bit of this orange color, which is, I believe this is Indian yellow. And I'm going to have a little bit of this orange color over here. Oh, maybe that's not Indian yellow. This is cadmium light. You know, my pan might be a little mixed up in there. I'm going to take my orange here and I'm going to run it over, since these colors are still wet, inside of there. And I have kind of mixed to ink consistency. I'm going to be choosing, this is my darkest side over here. So I want to make sure I have some of my darker colors here. And I'm going to be rolling those on there. So I'm just tapping them in and letting the watercolor do its own thing. Now this one's a lot darker here, but I'm going around the edge. I could take that same color, tap it in on the ridges, using a lot less water this time. Watercolor is always going to dry lighter. Okay, I'm going to stop there and let that dry and see what happens to those colors. Let's start on this one. So I probably will speed it up at this point because this will be the same steps that I did for this one. Again, by these ribs, they're going to be darker because they're going inwards. So I want to add some of that darkness there. I did add a little bit of my yellow ochre color, which is kind of a muted tone of yellow. That is in this color area here too. So I'm adding a little bit of that color on just to give this pumpkin a little different look than my first one. But I'm still going to be adding some of that brighter orange on there. You can also tap your brush, take your brush and tap that color in, and that's going to be adding a little bit of texture to your pumpkin. Pumpkins have some texture. They're not necessarily all the way smooth, and I'm going to be doing more of that texturing on this one here in the middle. Okay, so I've had a little bit of time for this one to dry. I'm going to pick up just a little bit of my brown, my burnt umber color, my burnt brown color here, and I'm going to be adding just a tiny bit of that color here. I'm going to be washing that over and creating just even a little more sense of some darkness in my pumpkin. I'm holding my brush a little bit sideways. I'm going to be trying to create a little bit of texture that way using my brush. This is pretty watered down. It's probably more like in that very much a light ink consistency. I'm just looking at wanting to overglaze that color and deepening it up so it's not so bright. I'm looking for more of that folk art style, so it's going to be a tone down color. Go ahead and pick up a smaller brush. Let's do a tiny bit more work on our stems here at the top. And even though it's dry or it's wet still there, I'm okay with that because if those colors run together, they're still going to look good and it's going to give kind of an interesting look to that pumpkin top. This is a fairly small brush. It's got a really small little tip on it that will work great for creating these little twirls on here. This could also be done in an ink pen or a gel pen would look great too to be able to create these in. I'm going to pick up a little bit of gold, tap that in there. I'm using less water. I'm going directly from my pan and coming right in now and just taking advantage of that area being wet and basically mixing my colors right on my paper. So I'm creating a new color just by picking it up out of my pan and tapping it in there. I really do like how this edge kind of bled into that area, and I definitely want to add a little bit more of that dark color to my pumpkins. So I'm going to be mixing a little bit of a burnt sienna and a little bit darker red brown, and let's try a little bit of that. I'm going to be having a little bit thicker consistency, and let's add a little bit of that color into my pumpkins, especially around the ridges. And when you're doing this, if you find that you have your lines are too harsh, rinse out your brush, get some clean water, and then just add a little bit of water to your edges and soften them up. So you can push and pull that color and make that line work just a little bit softer. They are looking great. Let's go ahead and put a layer of black on my crow. Even though black is a very dark color, a lot of times you do have to put another layer on. So let's go ahead and just put a first layer of the black on. I'm using a smaller brush because I have kind of a lot of detail on my little crow. So I'm just going to be using this small little brush and popping in this little bit of black. So let's go ahead and use this. I'm going to add some more white. I want it to be a little bit more pastel-y color. The white pumpkins have been super popular these last few years, and they do come in a whole bunch of different textures and colors, and I do enjoy seeing them. Pumpkin stands are always fun to go see every year and see all the different colors. Now, while this is wet, I'm going to switch over to my other set. Well, let's see. I'm going to switch over to my other set, and I'm going to pick up a bright shade of green, just a really bright shade of green. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to just tap it with the edge of my brush and add a little bit of this bright green color to it. And let that flow out. Because that color is wet, it's going to just kind of flow out and create its own patterns. So I'm creating a little bit of texture by tapping it with the end of my brush. Now I also want to use this brighter blue color, so I'm going to be taking some of this blue color here. Not a ton of water on my brush. I'm going to take it right from the pan, and I'm going to tap a little bit of that color as well. I do like to use some pre-mixed colors. Some people really enjoy mixing colors. Sometimes I enjoy mixing colors too, but a lot of times I like already having the colors pre-mixed. They call them convenience colors, but I do love to have them pre-mixed. And the reason why is because I know I can go right to it, get the color I want, and I don't have to worry about mixing. And then the next time I do it, if I'm still interested in using that same color, I can come right back to it and know that it's already mixed. Okay, so that is some of that brighter color. I'm going to be picking up a little bit of the dark brown, and I'm just going to tip it up right on the tip of my brush, and I don't have a lot of water in here, and I'm going to be adding just a few little dark dots as well. And let's see how that pumpkin dries. Let's add a few more accents. Let's work a little bit more on our little guy up here, our little pattern for our arms here. And I'm going to be doing kind of this dirty down red color here. It's some red with some brown in it. Kind of a nice little folk art color. I'm going to be just doing a wash of a light brown first, a reddish brown over everything. And then I'll be adding that red color on the top. So I'm going to be doing this color first. Gotta have a little bit more water on there. If your brush drags like that, that just means you need to add a little bit more water so that it'll grow across your paper. Okay, we'll let that dry a little bit before I put my red in there. And then for the beak, I'm just going to be choosing some of that bright color I have left over, whatever I might have left over. And I'm going to just pop that on in there. This is the same color I'm going to be using for my stars. So I'm going to be just picking up whatever I might have and using that. I'm going to be adding a few little berries to this. So I'm just going to be choosing some of the gold, some of the rust colors that I might have, and just tapping some of those colors on. And I will come back later with my Micron pen and go ahead and connect my berries. I'm mixing a brown to do the vines with. So I'm just going to be picking up some of the red brown and and adding it to my other and just creating kind of a nice little ink consistency here. When I do my brush, I kind of put it in my puddle and then I twist it and pull it towards me. And that's going to give me a nice little point to be able to do these in. And then let's just create a few little vines that are coming off to my edge using light pressure and a little bit thicker pressure. If you use a thin pressure, you'll get a thin line. If you push down a little bit farther, harder, you're going to get a thick line. And again, remember, if you need to, turn your page so that you can pull that line towards you. It can make a big difference in the line quality you get. Okay, let's continue on with our little bit of detail work inside of our little crow here. And I'm going to be picking up that darker brownish red color and creating a pattern with that. Okay, that looks good. Let's go ahead and use my micron pen now to add just a few more details on here. Those little knees on there, I think is so cute. Now, when I come down to the pumpkin, I'm going to be doing that sketch quality where I'm making movements, multiple movements across my paper and going past my lines and not necessarily sticking exactly how I drew them. You can also add some texture to your stems here by coming in and adding some dashes and some dots. You could also create that by creating a twist to your pumpkin stem. And all you do is you do the little twists in the direction that you drew it. Double up your lines. Okay, let's add a little bit more detail to these stars and these other parts here. Let's do a little bit of background work. I'm going to take some clean water and just run some clean water here and there. I want to do a little bit of splitter splatter work, but I want it to be a soft splitter splatter. My water isn't quite clean. I still have a little bit of the coloration from the colors that I have been using, but I think that'll look great to add just a little tiny bit of a wash behind there. So it's just kind of adding a little bit more on there. Now I'm going to take some of that brown that I had mixed up earlier and really water it down. Get a nice little tea consistency there. And then I'm going to be tapping some of this little splitter splatter. If there's a lot of water, and I'll show you in just a minute, if there's a lot of water, it's going to spread out a lot. And if there's less water there, it's going to just keep more of a solid dot. So here up above, you can see where my color just really spread out, and that's just kind of a softness of it all. And then here are some larger dots, or more dots that have kept their shape, and it just means there was less water there in the background. So if you would like a dot that is more exact, perhaps don't wet your background very much and then put that on there. But if you'd like a nice blend, you can kind of even your colors out a little bit, have a little bit differences in water in your background, and then go ahead and splish splash that way. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. All right, there it is. I think it turned out great. I love this folk art country style. I hope you enjoy it too. If you wouldn't mind, give me a thumbs up. YouTube loves a thumbs up. And then leave me a comment if you like to do pumpkins and maybe what kind of more pumpkins that you would like to see. Would you want acrylic paint? Do you want some mixed media? Do you want to say yes to all of the above? Let me know what you would like to see coming up for this fall. I love to celebrate with pumpkins. Well, that is it, my friends, for joining me. You'll see a post like this on my Facebook page that includes this picture. If you want to share yours, go ahead and include it underneath the post. I'm a firm believer that it doesn't have to look like mine to be good, and you encourage other people to try too. And we all have different ideas of what art looks like. So yeah, go ahead and share your work. I love to see it. Well, that is it for now, and I'll be back on YouTube shortly again, and hopefully next time when you come, you'll create along with me.